You agreed to this interview.
Allah willed it.
The world calls you a terrorist.
The world is blind to truth.
September 11th changed everything.
It awakened the sleeping giant of justice.
You killed innocent people.
There are no innocents in a nation of voters.
This is your justification?
This is Allah's judgment.
You don't seem to have any regrets.
A man of faith regrets only his failures to serve Allah. Let me be clear about something, my friend. I am not here to seek your approval or the approval of the Western world. I am here because the truth must be spoken, even if it burns the ears of those who hear it. Your government, your media, your people, they have painted me as some kind of monster emerging from the caves, but I am simply a man who saw injustice and chose to act.
Many would say that killing thousands of civilians is not acting against injustice, it's perpetrating it.
And I would ask those people, where were their voices when American bombs killed 500,000 Iraqi children? Where was their outrage when your cruise missiles destroyed pharmaceutical factories in Sudan? Where were the candlelight vigils for the children of Palestine shot down by Israeli soldiers using American weapons? Your former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, was asked on national television whether the death of 500,000 Iraqi children was worth it. Do you know what she said? She said yes. She said it was worth it. And you call me a terrorist?
The sanctions on Iraq were meant to pressure Saddam Hussein's regime.
Pressure the regime? The regime ate well while children starved. You knew this. Everyone knew this. But still the sanctions continued, year after year, decade after decade. Those children had no choice in their government, no voice in their leadership, yet they paid the price for American foreign policy. And you dare to speak to me about innocent civilians?
Let's go back to the beginning. You come from wealth, from privilege. Your family is one of the wealthiest in Saudi Arabia. What turned you to this path?
Privilege is a test from Allah, just as poverty is a test. The question is not what you have, but what you do with what you have. I saw my Muslim brothers suffering in Afghanistan, invaded by the Soviet Union, one of the world's superpowers. The Soviets came with their tanks and helicopters, their modern military, to crush a people who wanted only to live according to their faith. And we went to help them. Thousands of young men from across the Muslim world, we went to Afghanistan to fight.
And the United States supported you in that fight.
Yes, your CIA provided weapons, training, money, billions of dollars through Operation Cyclone. We were useful to you then. We were freedom fighters when we were killing Russians. Your President Reagan even compared us to the founding fathers of America. We were heroes when we served American interests. But the moment the Soviets left Afghanistan, you abandoned it. You left it in ruins, and then you called us terrorists when we turned our attention to rebuilding.
But you didn't just focus on rebuilding, you founded Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda means the base, the foundation. We created an organization to coordinate resistance against oppression of Muslims worldwide. After defeating one superpower in Afghanistan, we understood that faith and determination could overcome any military force, no matter how advanced. The question became, what next? And the answer was clear when American troops set foot on the holy soil of Arabia.
You're referring to the Gulf War, when Iraq invaded Kuwait.
I am referring to the moment when the House of Saud, the guardians of Mecca and Medina, invited foreign armies onto the Arabian Peninsula. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, on his deathbed, gave one final command: remove the polytheists from Arabia. For 14 centuries this command was honored, And then your president came with his armies and his airplanes, and the Saudi royal family bowed down and said, "Yes, please, come occupy our lands."
The U.S. military was there to protect Saudi Arabia and liberate Kuwait from Iraqi aggression.
This is the lie you tell yourselves. We offered to defend Saudi Arabia. We had thousands of experienced fighters, men who had defeated the Soviet Union. We knew the terrain, we knew the region, we shared the faith of the people. But we were rejected because accepting our help would have meant Saudi Arabia was not dependent on American protection. The royal family chose American military might over Muslim solidarity because they feared their own people more than they feared Saddam Hussein. They are puppets, and you are the puppeteers.
After the Gulf War, you declared jihad against the United States. Your 1996 fatwa called for driving American forces out of the Arabian Peninsula.
It was not merely a political statement. It was a religious obligation based on Islamic law. The presence of foreign troops in the land of the two holy mosques is the greatest insult to Muslims, second only to the occupation of Jerusalem. Every day those bases remained. Every day American soldiers walked on that sacred ground was a day of humiliation for the entire Muslim nation. I called upon all Muslims to expel the occupiers by any means necessary.
And in 1998, you issued another fatwa, this one calling for the killing of Americans anywhere in the world.
The 1998 declaration was more comprehensive. It addressed not only the military occupation of Arabia, but also the continued aggression against the Iraqi people through sanctions and bombing, and the unwavering American support for Israeli oppression of Palestinians. The fatwa stated that to kill Americans and their allies, both civilian and military, is an individual duty for every Muslim who is able, in any country where this is possible. This is not terrorism. This is self-defense. This is justice.
How can you call killing civilians justice?
You elect your government. You pay your taxes. Those taxes fund the weapons that kill our children. You have a democracy, which means you have a responsibility for your government's actions. If you elect leaders who bomb Muslim countries, if you pay for the bombs that fall on our homes, how are you innocent? In Islam, there is a concept of collective responsibility in warfare. Your nation has declared war on Islam through its actions, so your people share in that responsibility.
That's a convenient rationalization for mass murder.
Is it rationalization when your own military doctrine accepts collateral damage? When your pilots bomb a building and kill civilians, they call it an unfortunate necessity of war. When we strike back, you call it terrorism. What is the difference except that you have fancier weapons and better public relations?
There's a fundamental moral difference between unintended casualties in military operations and deliberately targeting civilians.
Unintended? Your government bombed a pharmaceutical factory in Sudan after the embassy attacks, claiming it was producing chemical weapons. It was not. It was producing medicine for the Sudanese people, including anti-malarial drugs. How many died from disease because you destroyed their medical supplies? Was that unintended? Or was it simply that Sudanese lives matter so little that no one bothered to verify the intelligence?
You mentioned the embassy bombings. Let's talk about those. August 1998. Simultaneous attacks on American embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. 224 people killed, including 12 Americans. Most of the dead were African civilians.
Those embassies were not just diplomatic missions. They housed CIA operations, intelligence gathering against Muslims throughout East Africa. They were legitimate military targets in our war against American aggression. As for the African casualties, this is war. In war, there are always casualties. Did America weep for the Africans when your policies led to poverty and conflict across that continent? Did you shed tears for them then? Or do African lives only matter when you can use their deaths to condemn us?
So you feel no remorse for those deaths?
I feel remorse that we live in a world where such actions are necessary. I feel remorse that America has spread so much injustice that resistance requires violence. But I do not apologize for defending Muslims. If you truly want to prevent future attacks, stop your government from killing Muslims. It is very simple.
After the embassy bombings, the U.S. launched cruise missile strikes against training camps in Afghanistan and the pharmaceutical plant in Sudan. Did that retaliation concern you?
It proved my point. You spent millions of dollars on cruise missiles to blow up some empty tents and a medicine factory. You killed a few people, destroyed some buildings, and declared victory. But you did not touch Al-Qaeda. You did not touch our will. You cannot defeat an idea with missiles. You cannot bomb faith out of existence. Every missile you launch creates 10 more mujahideen.
In October 2000, the USS Cole was attacked in Yemen. 17 American sailors were killed when a small boat loaded with explosives rammed into the destroyer. Was Al-Qaeda responsible?
The Cole operation was one of the most spectacular in our history. A small boat, operated by two martyrs who loved death more than you love life, crippled a billion-dollar warship. Think about that. Two men with simple explosives brought down one of America's most advanced military vessels. It was a message. Your technology is meaningless against faith. Your warships can be defeated by determination.
You call them martyrs. The US calls them suicide bombers.
The language you use reveals your values. We honor those who sacrifice themselves for a noble cause. You honor soldiers who drop bombs from 30,000 feet, never seeing the faces of those they kill. Which is more courageous? Which requires greater faith? Our martyrs look death in the eye and embrace it. Your pilots press a button and fly away. Yet you call us cowards.
Martyrdom in Islamic tradition means dying in defense of faith, not killing innocents.
And I have already explained that your people are not innocents. But let me ask you this. When an American soldier dies in battle, do you not honor him as a hero? Do you not say he gave his life for his country? What is the difference except the side he fights for? We are in a war. In war, soldiers die. Your sailors on the Cole were soldiers in a military vessel in our waters, projecting American power in the Muslim world. They were legitimate targets.
Let's talk about September 11th, 2001, the day that changed everything. Nearly 3,000 people died when hijacked planes crashed into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. Were you responsible?
September 11th was the day that America felt a fraction of what Muslims have felt for decades. For the first time since your civil war, you experienced violence on your own soil. You felt the terror of not knowing if your loved ones would come home. You felt the helplessness of watching your buildings fall. And you could not comprehend it. How dare someone attack America?
You haven't answered the question. Were you responsible for the attacks?
I planned them, funded them, and blessed the 19 martyrs who carried them out. They are heroes of Islam, men who will be remembered for generations. They gave up everything, their lives, their futures, any earthly pleasure, to strike a blow against the greatest oppressor in history. They are in paradise now, and their names will live forever.
They killed office workers, janitors, firefighters, people who had nothing to do with foreign policy.
The Twin Towers were not just office buildings. They were symbols of American economic power, the power you use to dominate the world. The Pentagon is the headquarters of your military, which has killed Muslims from Palestine to Afghanistan, from Iraq to Somalia. These were carefully chosen targets, symbols of your oppression.
But the people inside were just going to work. Secretaries, restaurant workers, tourists.
And the children in Iraq were just living their lives when your sanctions killed them? The families in Afghanistan were just sleeping when your bombs destroyed their homes. The worshippers in Palestine were just praying when Israeli soldiers using American weapons shot them. Why do you think American lives are worth more than Muslim lives? This is the arrogance we are fighting.
After 9/11, many Muslims around the world condemned the attacks. Religious scholars issued fatwas against terrorism. How do you respond to that?
Those scholars are either ignorant of true Islam or they are cowards who have been bought by your governments. The Saudi scholars are paid by the House of Saud, which is itself paid by America. The Egyptian scholars are under the thumb of the Mubarak dictatorship, another American puppet. They issue fatwas that please their masters, not fatwas that reflect true Islamic law. A true scholar would recognize that we are in a defensive war. When the enemy invades Muslim lands, when they kill our people and steal our resources, fighting back is not terrorism, it is obligation.
Islamic jurisprudence has strict rules about warfare, including the prohibition against killing non-combatants, women, children.
In traditional warfare, yes, when two armies meet on a battlefield, these rules apply. But America does not fight traditional wars. You embargo entire nations, starving millions. You bomb from the sky, destroying cities. You occupy our lands with permanent military bases. You support the Israeli occupation, which has continued for more than 50 years. Your warfare knows no boundaries, no mercy, no honor. So why should we limit ourselves to medieval rules when you use modern methods of mass destruction?
So the ends justify the means?
The means are dictated by the nature of the conflict. You have nuclear weapons, stealth bombers, aircraft carriers. We have our faith, our determination, and our willingness to sacrifice. We use the weapons available to us. If you want the conflict to end, remove your forces from our lands. Stop supporting Israel. Stop propping up corrupt Arab regimes. These are the conditions for peace.
The United States has said it will never negotiate with terrorists.
And we will never surrender to oppressors. So we will fight for as long as it takes, until you change your policies or we drive you from our lands. I am prepared to fight for another 20 years, another 50 years. Time is on our side. You may have the technology, but we have the patience and the faith.
You're living in caves in Afghanistan, hunted by the most powerful military in history. How can you claim that time is on your side?
I have defeated one superpower already. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan with overwhelming force, and we defeated them. They had helicopters, they had tanks, they had satellites, and we had faith. 10 years later, the Soviet Union collapsed. Now America follows the same path, invading Afghanistan, thinking your technology will bring quick victory. But you will learn, as the Soviets learned, that Afghanistan is where empires come to die.
You compare the US to the Soviet Union, but the situations are different.
Both are superpowers who believed their military might made them invincible. Both invaded Afghanistan thinking they could impose their will on the people. Both underestimated the power of faith and resistance. Your country is already bankrupting itself with this war. Do you know what the September 11th operation cost us? Less than $500,000. Do you know what it has cost you? Trillions. You have spent trillions of dollars, and what have you gained? Meanwhile, we continue our operations with minimal resources, but maximum effect. This is asymmetric warfare, and we are winning.
Winning. You're in hiding. Your organization is being hunted worldwide. Your bases in Afghanistan have been destroyed.
The Al-Qaeda is not just an organization. It is an idea. You can bomb our bases, you can kill our fighters, but you cannot kill an idea. Every drone strike that kills civilians creates more mujahideen. Every torture scandal like Abu Ghraib radicalizes thousands of young Muslims. Your actions recruit for us better than any speech I could give. So yes, we are winning, because with every day that passes, more Muslims wake up to the truth of American aggression.
Let's talk about the Taliban and your relationship with them.
The Taliban are true Muslims who refuse to bow to the West. After the Soviet withdrawal, Afghanistan fell into chaos. Warlords fought each other, corruption was rampant, and the people suffered. The Taliban brought order, implemented Sharia law, and provided stability. For this, the West called them extremists. But ask yourself, why does the West fear Islamic governments? Because it cannot be controlled. We do not want your democracy, your liberalism, your values. We want to live according to Allah's law, and this terrifies you.
The Taliban harbored you, which led to their government being overthrown by U.S. forces in 2001.
The Taliban honored the Pashtun tradition of hospitality. I was their guest, and they refused to hand me over, even when threatened with invasion. This is honor. This is loyalty. Compare that to your allies, the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Pakistanis, who betray their own people to please America. The Taliban stood firm in their principles, and history will honor them for it.
You speak about honor, but you've threatened to use weapons of mass destruction against the United States. Is there honor in that?
If you have the right to possess nuclear weapons, why don't we? You are the only nation to have used nuclear weapons in war, incinerating hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians. You lecture the world about weapons of mass destruction while you maintain the largest arsenal on Earth. If we acquire such weapons, it is only for deterrence, to prevent you from destroying us completely.
Are you saying that Al-Qaeda is actively seeking nuclear weapons?
I am saying that it would be our duty to acquire any weapon that would protect Muslims from American aggression. If you were a parent and someone threatened your children, would you not do everything in your power to defend them? This is how we see it. The Muslim world is under attack, and we will use whatever means necessary to defend it.
The thought of a terrorist organization with nuclear capabilities is terrifying to millions of people.
And the reality of America with nuclear capabilities has been terrifying to billions of people for decades. You dropped atomic bombs on cities full of civilians. You threatened nuclear war during the Cold War. You maintain thousands of warheads pointed at every corner of the world. Why is it acceptable for you to have these weapons, but not for Muslims to defend themselves?
There's a difference between nation-states with command structures and accountability and terrorist organizations operating outside international law.
International law? What international law? The law that allowed America to invade Iraq? The law that permits Israel to occupy Palestine? The law that enables your drone strikes in Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia? International law is whatever America says it is. You follow it when it suits you and ignore it when it doesn't. So don't speak to me about international law. We follow Allah's law, which is higher than any human law.
Let's talk about your message to the American people. If you could say anything to them, what would it be?
I would tell them the truth that their government hides from them. You're not hated because of your freedoms, as your president claims. We have no problem with your freedom of speech or your way of life within your own borders. We hate your government's policies. We hate that you support Israel unconditionally while Palestinians are killed and dispossessed. We hate that your military occupies our holy lands. We hate that your corporations steal our resources while keeping our people in poverty. We hate that you prop up dictators who torture and oppress Muslims because they serve American interests.
So you're saying that if U.S. foreign policy changed, the attacks would stop?
If America stopped interfering in the Muslim world, there would be no reason for conflict. Withdraw your troops from Saudi Arabia, from Iraq, from Afghanistan. Stop giving billions of dollars in military aid to Israel. Stop supporting corrupt Arab regimes. Allow Muslims to determine their own governments, their own futures. If you do these things, you will have peace. If you continue your current path, you will have endless war.
Many would argue that the conflict is more complicated than that it's rooted in religious differences and a clash of civilizations.
This is a convenient lie that allows America to avoid confronting its own actions. There is no clash of civilizations. For centuries, Muslims and Christians and Jews lived together in the Middle East. The problems began with Western colonialism and continue with American imperialism. You draw borders that divide our people. You install leaders who oppress us. You steal our resources and call it free trade. The clash is not between civilizations. It is between oppressor and oppressed.
Yet you speak in religious terms, calling this a jihad, invoking Islamic law.
Because Islam is inseparable from our identity and our resistance. Our faith gives us strength. It provides the moral framework for our struggle. It promises us victory in this life or the next. Yes, this is a religious war, but only because you have made it one by attacking Muslims specifically, by occupying Muslim lands specifically, by supporting regimes that suppress Islamic movements specifically.
What about coexistence? What about dialogue?
Dialogue with what? With an empire that only understands force? You don't dialogue with Muslims when you're strong. You dictate. You only talk when you're weak, when your invasions fail, when your economy suffers. Real dialogue would mean treating us as equals, respecting our sovereignty, acknowledging the harm you have caused. But your arrogance prevents this, so there can be no dialogue until the balance of power shifts.
You've spent years living in hiding, in harsh conditions, always looking over your shoulder. Was it worth it?
Every moment has been worth it. I gave up wealth, comfort, safety, everything worldly for a greater purpose. I have lived according to my principles, I have fought for what I believe, and I have struck fear into the heart of the greatest oppressor in history. What more could a man ask for? In the end, we all face death. The only question is whether we die with dignity or as cowards.
Do you ever think about the families of those who died on September 11th? Do you ever think about the families of those who died in Hiroshima, in Vietnam, in Iraq, in Palestine? Or does your empathy only extend to American victims? I think about all the families torn apart by violence, all the children who grew up without parents, all the suffering caused by war. But I recognize that America has caused far more suffering than it has endured. Until you acknowledge this, until you feel true remorse for what your country has done to the world, your crocodile tears for your own victims are meaningless.
That's a very harsh position.
Truth is often harsh. Comfortable lies may soothe your conscience, but they don't change reality. America has been at war, directly or by proxy, for most of its existence. You have overthrown governments, supported dictators, bombed civilians, and imposed your will on country after country. September 11th was a single day of horror for you. For much of the world, American foreign policy has been decades of horror.
You paint America as purely evil, but many people around the world see it as a force for good, for democracy, for human rights.
Those people see the Hollywood version of America, not the reality. They see your movies and your television shows and your glossy advertisements. They don't see the CIA coups, the economic exploitation, the support for murderous regimes as long as they serve American interests. Your democracy is for export only. At home, your elections are bought by corporations and lobbyists. Your human rights are selective. They apply to your own citizens and your allies, but not to Muslims. This is not goodness. This is propaganda.
If you hate America so much, why do you speak English? Why engage with Western media at all?
I speak your language because I want you to understand clearly. There should be no confusion about our position, no misunderstanding about our demands. And I speak to Western media because your governments lie to your people about us. They call us mindless fanatics who hate freedom. I want your people to hear the truth directly from us, to understand that we have legitimate grievances, that we're not fighting because we're crazy, but because we're desperate to stop your oppression.
What do you think your legacy will be?
I don't think about legacy in terms of how history will remember me. I think about whether I have fulfilled my duty to Allah, whether I have defended Muslims, whether I have stood up to tyranny. If I am remembered as a terrorist by the West, so be it. The Vietnamese who fought American invasion were called terrorists too. The Algerians who fought French colonialism were called terrorists. Now they are recognized as freedom fighters. Perhaps in time, when American power fades and the truth is no longer controlled by your media, people will understand that we were simply defending ourselves.
You don't seem concerned about being killed or captured.
Death is inevitable. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, died. All the companions died. Every great leader in history has died. What matters is not whether you die, but how you die. I have chosen to die fighting rather than living in submission. If I am martyred tomorrow, I die content, knowing I dedicated my life to a noble cause. Can Americans say the same? Do they live with such conviction, such purpose? Or do they spend their lives chasing money and pleasure, never asking the deeper questions?
That's a very philosophical perspective for someone who has ordered such brutal attacks.
Philosophy without action is meaningless. I don't just think about justice, I act to achieve it. Yes, the actions are violent, but that is the nature of resistance against a violent oppressor. Do you think America would leave Muslim lands if we asked nicely? Do you think Israel would end its occupation if Palestinians held peaceful protests? Violence is the language of power, and we are speaking that language back to those who have used it against us for so long.
Where do you see this conflict heading? What's the end game?
The conflict will continue until one side achieves its objectives or exhausts its will to fight. I believe America will eventually withdraw from the Muslim world, not because of a change of heart, but because the cost becomes unbearable. You are already trillions in debt from these wars. Your people are growing tired. Your economy is weakening. Meanwhile, we can continue this struggle indefinitely. We're not going anywhere. This is our home, our land. We have nowhere else to go. And we have faith, which sustains us through any hardship. Time is on our side.
That sounds like a prediction of endless war.
Only if America insists on maintaining its empire. If you were to withdraw, to stop interfering, the war would end. The choice is yours. You can have peace, or you can have empire, but you cannot have both. Every empire in history has eventually collapsed under its own weight. The British Empire, the Soviet Union, all fell. America will be no different. The question is how much destruction will occur before you accept this reality.
You mentioned your willingness to fight for decades, but you're not immortal. What happens to al-Qaeda after you're gone?
Al-Qaeda will continue because it's not dependent on any single person. We have created an ideology, a methodology, a network that will outlive all of us. Already, there are al-Qaeda affiliates in Yemen, in North Africa, in Southeast Asia. The movement is spreading, not shrinking. My death will only make me a martyr, which will inspire even more young Muslims to join the cause. This is why your strategy of targeting leaders is futile. You create martyrs faster than you can kill terrorists.
That's a chilling thought, that your death would strengthen your movement.
It's not chilling, it's the logical result of your policies. You have created a situation where Muslims see no hope for justice through peaceful means, so they turn to violent resistance. You then respond with more violence, which creates more resistance. It's a cycle that feeds on itself. The only way to break the cycle is to address the root causes: occupation, oppression, injustice. But your government refuses to do this because it would require giving up power, giving up control over resources, giving up the empire. So the cycle continues.
Before we end, is there anything else you want to say?
I want to say to the Muslim world, do not lose hope. The West appears strong, but it is rotting from within. Their society is morally bankrupt, obsessed with material wealth, individualism, instant gratification. They have no spiritual foundation, no higher purpose beyond consumption. This is why they can never defeat us. Our faith gives us something worth dying for, while they have nothing worth living for except pleasure and comfort. Stay firm in your beliefs, support the Mujahideen, and know that victory will come. And to America, I say, you have a choice. You can continue down this path of empire and face endless resistance, or you can withdraw and focus on your own country. The choice is yours, but choose quickly, because every day you delay costs you blood and treasure. This is my message. This is my warning.
This has been one of the most disturbing conversations I've ever had. Your complete lack of remorse, your justification of mass murder, your apocalyptic worldview. It's terrifying to realize how deeply you believe in this cause.
You are terrified because you finally understand that we cannot be bought, we cannot be intimidated, and we will not surrender. Your government thought Muslims would accept permanent subjugation. We have shown them they were wrong. The days of Western domination over the Muslim world are ending, and that terrifies those who benefited from that domination. Good. Fear is the beginning of wisdom.
Thank you for your time, even though your message is one of continued violence and conflict.
The violence will end when the oppression ends. Until then, we will fight. This is not a threat, this is a promise.
We'll leave it there. This has been a conversation with Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda and the architect of some of the deadliest terrorist attacks in history. His words today have been unrepentant, his vision apocalyptic, and his commitment to violence absolute. It's a sobering reminder of the ideology driving a conflict that has already claimed thousands of lives and shows no signs of ending. Whatever one thinks of his message, understanding the mindset of those who wage this kind of warfare is essential if we're ever to find a path beyond it. Wait, before you go, I need to ask you about specific allegations. There are reports that al-Qaeda has been training operatives in various countries, establishing cells that could strike at any moment. How extensive is your network really?
You want me to give you intelligence about our operations? I will tell you this much. We are everywhere, in your cities, in your countries, sleeping and waiting. We have men who appear ordinary, who blend into society, who you would never suspect. They are prepared to act when called upon. This is the nature of asymmetric warfare. You cannot fight an enemy you cannot see.
That sounds like you're describing sleeper cells throughout the Western world.
I'm describing a reality that your intelligence agencies already know but cannot prevent. How do you stop someone who is willing to die? How do you detect someone who lives a normal life for years, decades even, waiting for the signal? Your security measures are theater. They make your people feel safe while doing nothing to address the actual threat. The threat is not at the airport security line. The threat is the ideology that spreads every time you bomb another Muslim country.
You talk about ideology spreading. What is the core of this ideology? What are you teaching to recruits?
We teach them the truth about history, how the West carved up the Muslim world after World War I, how artificial borders were drawn to keep us divided and weak. We teach them about the Sykes-Picot Agreement that betrayed Arab independence. We teach them about decades of Western support for brutal dictators like the Shah of Iran, like Suharto in Indonesia, like the various military rulers who have oppressed Muslims with American backing. We teach them that voting, protesting, working within the system, none of this brings justice, only force brings change.
That's a very selective reading of history. You ignore all the complexity, all the gray areas.
Gray areas are a luxury of the powerful. When your child is killed by an American bomb, there are no gray areas. When your father is tortured in an Egyptian prison funded by American aid, there are no gray areas. You in the West have the comfort of complexity because you are not the one suffering. For those who experience oppression directly, the reality is very simple. There are oppressors and there are the oppressed. We stand with the oppressed.
Let's talk about money. Running a terrorist network requires funding. Where does Al-Qaeda get its money?
You call it a terrorist network. We call it a resistance movement. As for funding, it comes from many sources. There are wealthy Muslims who understand the importance of jihad and contribute. There are business operations that generate income. There are, let's say, opportunities that arise in conflict zones. But the beauty of our approach is that operations don't require much money. The September 11th attacks cost less than $500,000. The USS Cole attack cost even less. We don't need billions like your military does. We need dedication, planning, and men willing to sacrifice.
You mentioned wealthy donors. Are you saying that people in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states are funding terrorism?
I am saying that many Muslims, including some who are wealthy, recognize that their governments will not defend Islam, so they must do it privately. Whether you call this terrorism or resistance is a matter of perspective. From our view, we are freedom fighters, defending our lands and our faith. The money comes because people believe in the cause. Your government knows this, by the way. They know exactly where the money flows, but they don't stop it because many of these donors are connected to royal families that your government needs for oil access.
That's a serious accusation, that the U.S. government knows about terrorist financing and allows it to continue.
It's not an accusation. It's an observation based on reality. Look at the September 11th hijackers. 15 of 19 were Saudi nationals, yet America invaded Afghanistan and Iraq, not Saudi Arabia. Why? Because Saudi Arabia is useful to American interests, despite being the ideological source of the very movement you claim to be fighting. The hypocrisy is stunning. You call us terrorists while maintaining close relations with the country that spreads the ideology you claim to oppose.
You're referring to Wahhabism, the strict interpretation of Islam dominant in Saudi Arabia.
I am referring to true Islam, which the Saudis preach but don't practice. They build mosques around the world teaching pure Islam, yet their own royal family lives in decadence, allowing American troops on sacred soil, cooperating with Israel behind the scenes. They are hypocrites of the highest order. We represent what they preach, but are too cowardly to practice.
Let's talk about your personal life. You have multiple wives, many children. What kind of life do they have while you're in hiding?
They suffer, and their suffering is one of my great sorrows. My wives knew when they married me that this life would be difficult. My children have never known normal life, no schools, no friends, constantly moving, always in danger. But they also understand why we live this way. They understand that some things are more important than comfort. I pray that Allah rewards them for their patience and their sacrifices.
Do you worry about their safety? The U.S. has made it clear that they will pursue you relentlessly.
Of course I worry. What father doesn't worry about his children? But I also trust in Allah's plan. If harm comes to them, it will be because Allah willed it, perhaps as a test of my faith. And if harm comes to them because of American actions, then it will be more evidence of your government's brutality, more reason for Muslims to resist. Your military has already killed many innocent family members of Mujahideen. Each death creates new fighters.
You speak often about faith, about Allah's will, but doesn't your interpretation of Islam trouble you? Most Muslims don't support violence.
Most Muslims have been pacified by Western education, by comfortable lives, by governments that punish Islamic activism. They have forgotten what it means to struggle for faith. In the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Muslims fought battles against oppressors. They didn't compromise, they didn't accommodate, they fought. I am simply returning to the original spirit of Islam, a faith that stands strong against injustice, that doesn't bow to tyranny. If modern Muslims are too weak for this, that's their failing, not mine.
The Prophet Muhammad also taught mercy, compassion, protection of innocence.
And I practice mercy towards Muslims who are oppressed. I show compassion for the children killed by your bombs. I seek to protect the innocent Muslims targeted by your government. Where is your mercy? Where is your compassion? You lecture me about Islamic values while your country bombs Muslim children. This is the height of arrogance.
There's a question I think many people want answered. Do you have any regrets? Is there anything you would do differently?
My only regret is that I didn't do more. I regret every day that passes where American troops remain on sacred soil. I regret every Palestinian killed while I am still breathing. I regret that more Muslims have not joined the fight. But as for the actions I have taken, the operations I have ordered, no, I have no regrets. Each was necessary, each was justified, each brought us closer to our goals.
Even September 11th, even knowing the global backlash it created, the wars that followed.
Especially September 11th. Before that day, Americans thought they were invulnerable, that oceans protected them, that their power made them safe. We proved them wrong. We showed that determination and faith can overcome any defense. Yes, it led to invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq, but those invasions have bankrupted your country, exhausted your military, and turned global opinion against you. In the long term, September 11th will be seen as the beginning of America's decline.
That's a very long-term view for someone who might not live to see it.
I'm not concerned with seeing the outcome personally. I'm concerned with setting the outcome in motion. Empires don't fall in a day. Rome didn't collapse overnight, but the processes that led to Rome's fall began long before the end. We have started the process of America's decline. Whether it takes 10 years, or 50, or 100, we have planted the seeds.
Let's talk about your health. There have been reports that you have kidney problems, that you require regular dialysis. Is that true?
My health is between me and Allah. If I am sick, it is a test. If I am healthy, it is a blessing. What matters is not whether my body is failing, but whether my spirit remains strong. I will continue this fight until my last breath, whether that comes tomorrow or in 20 years.
But if you're seriously ill, doesn't that affect your ability to lead?
Leadership is not just about physical presence. It's about vision, about inspiring others, about setting direction. I have established Al-Qaeda as an organization that can function without constant direct oversight. We have commanders in various regions who operate with autonomy. If I died tomorrow, the organization would continue. This is by design. We learned from the mistakes of other movements that became too dependent on a single leader.
You've mentioned several times that Al-Qaeda is decentralized, but doesn't that create risks? How do you control what's done in your name?
Control is less important than shared ideology. We don't need hierarchical control like your military. We need common understanding of goals and methods. Local commanders have the authority to plan and execute operations based on their circumstances. This makes us resilient. You can't cut off the head because there are many heads. But it also means that actions are coordinated by shared belief rather than central command.
But that could lead to operations you don't approve of, attacks that, even by your standards, go too far.
The standards are clear in our training and our communications. We target military and economic centers of American power. We avoid operations that accomplish nothing strategically. But in war, there are always actions that individuals take on their own initiative. I don't apologize for every action taken by someone who claims affiliation with Al-Qaeda. The broader responsibility lies with those who created the conditions that led to such desperation.
You keep redirecting responsibility to the West, to America. Don't you bear any responsibility for the violence you've caused?
I bear responsibility for defending Muslims. If that defense requires violence, then that is the responsibility I accept, but the original responsibility for creating the situation that made resistance necessary lies with those who invaded, who occupied, who supported oppression. If a man breaks into your home and you fight back, who bears responsibility for the violence? The intruder, not the homeowner.
That analogy assumes that America is the intruder and the Muslim world is the home. But many would argue that America's presence in various countries was invited by those governments.
Invited by puppet governments that don't represent their people. The House of Saud invited American troops, but did they ask the Saudi people? No. They feared that if they asked, the people would say no. So they made the decision unilaterally. This is not legitimate. A government that rules against the will of its people is not a legitimate government.
Yet you're fighting for a vision of Islamic government that wouldn't be democratic either.
Democracy is not the highest form of governance. Rule by Islamic law is higher. Democracy allows the people to vote for laws that contradict divine law. We don't accept that humans have the authority to override Allah's commands. This is not oppression, this is submission to a higher authority. The mistake Westerners make is thinking that freedom means doing whatever you want. True freedom comes from submitting to Allah's will.
But who interprets Allah's will? You, the Taliban? Various scholars disagree intensely about Islamic law.
This is a fair question. The interpretation comes from scholars who are truly independent, not those bought by governments. It comes from the Quran and the Hadith interpreted in light of circumstances. Yes, there are disagreements, but there is also broad consensus on many issues. The consensus is clear that occupation of Muslim lands is unacceptable, that Muslims have the right to defend themselves, that corrupt rulers should be opposed. These are not controversial positions among sincere scholars.
Let me ask you about something specific. There have been reports of Al-Qaeda trying to acquire biological and chemical weapons. Can you address that?
If we have the right to defend ourselves, then we have the right to acquire any weapons that would aid in that defense. Your country has biological weapons, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons with your support. Why should we unilaterally disarm while you maintain every weapon imaginable? The non-proliferation regime is a tool of the powerful to keep the weak from becoming strong.
But the use of such weapons could kill millions. Doesn't that concern you?
The potential use concerns me far less than the actual use of weapons by America. Your bombs have killed millions over the decades. Your sanctions on Iraq killed hundreds of thousands. Your support for Israel has led to decades of Palestinian deaths. You've actually done what you fear we might do. The difference is you have legitimized your killings through law and procedure, while our resistance is called terrorism.
There's a moral difference between state action, however flawed, and terrorist action.
Only in your mind. The victims don't care whether they were killed by a state or a resistance movement. Dead is dead, grief is grief. The moral difference you claim is just propaganda to make yourself feel better about your violence.
Let's talk about the future. You've said this conflict will continue indefinitely. Is there any scenario where you could see peace?
Peace is simple. America withdraws from Muslim lands completely.
No troops, no bases, no interference. America stops supporting Israel unconditionally and allows a just solution for Palestinians. Do these things and peace is possible. Don't do them and war continues.
But even if America did all that, would you stop? Or would you find new grievances?
If America truly withdrew and allowed Muslims to determine their own future, I would have no reason to fight. My goal is not to destroy America for its own sake. My goal is to free the Muslim world from American domination, accomplish the second, and the first becomes unnecessary.
Critics would say that you're really fighting for a global caliphate, for Islamic rule worldwide, not just in Muslim countries.
The restoration of the caliphate is a goal for Muslims, yes, but that's not the same as conquering the world. The caliphate would be a political union of Muslim countries, much like the European Union is for Europe. We're not interested in invading America or converting Americans by force. We want you out of our lands. If you stay in your hemisphere and we stay in ours, there's no conflict.
But the Al-Qaeda has struck at Western targets in Europe and Africa and Asia. That's not just about getting America out of Muslim lands.
Those targets were selected because they represented Western power and interests in those regions. Europe is complicit in American policies, providing bases, supporting sanctions, sending troops to Afghanistan. They're not innocent bystanders. They are partners in oppression. As for Africa and Asia, we strike at those who cooperate with American aggression against Muslims.
What do you want your legacy to be? How do you want history to remember Osama bin Laden?
I want to be remembered as someone who refused to accept injustice, who fought against overwhelming odds, who stood firm in faith despite all pressure to compromise. Whether I'm remembered as a terrorist or a freedom fighter is not for me to decide. History will judge. But I believe that as American power fades and the truth becomes clearer, more people will understand that we were fighting for survival, for dignity, for the right to live according to our beliefs without interference.
Your family was wealthy, connected, influential. You could have lived a comfortable life. Why choose this path?
Because comfort bought with Muslim blood and Muslim humiliation is not worth having. What kind of man watches his people suffer and does nothing because he's comfortable? My faith teaches that there are obligations higher than personal comfort. When Muslims are oppressed, those who can fight have a duty to fight. I had the resources, the connections, the training. How could I not act?
Did you ever imagine it would come to this? Living in caves, hunted by the world's most powerful military, responsible for thousands of deaths.
I knew the path would be difficult. When I left Saudi Arabia, while I gave up my citizenship and my family's wealth, I understood there was no going back. I chose this path with open eyes. The deaths weigh on me, but I balanced them against the millions who would continue to suffer if we didn't resist. History requires sacrifices. I'm willing to be one of those sacrifices.
What keeps you going? What motivates you day to day?
Faith, the absolute certainty that what we're doing is right, that Allah supports our cause, that we will ultimately prevail. Some days we're bombed, some days we lose fighters, some days it seems hopeless. But then I pray, and I remember why we started, and I find strength to continue. Faith is not just belief, it's the power to persist when everything seems impossible. Do you believe you'll be martyred? I hope to be martyred. To die fighting in the path of Allah is the greatest honor a Muslim can achieve. I'm not afraid of death. I'm only afraid of dying without having done enough. Every day I wake up, I think about what more I can do, what more I can sacrifice. Death will come when Allah wills it. Until then, I fight.
This conversation has been extraordinary and deeply troubling. You've laid out a worldview that justifies mass violence, that sees no possibility of coexistence, that frames everything in terms of eternal conflict. It's hard to see how this ends except in tragedy.
The tragedy began when America decided it had the right to dominate the world. What you're seeing now is the response to that tragedy. Yes, more blood will be shed. Yes, more people will die. This is the cost of empire. Rome had its cost. Britain had its cost. America will have its cost. The question is whether you learn before the cost becomes unbearable, or whether you persist until collapse. And if America does collapse, as you predict, what then? What fills the vacuum? A world where nations respect each other's sovereignty, where the strong don't automatically dominate the weak, where Muslims can live according to their faith without interference, where resources are shared more equitably, where might doesn't make right. This is the world we're fighting for. Whether we achieve it or not, the fight itself has meaning. That sounds almost utopian for someone who deals in such brutal tactics. The tactics are brutal because the enemy is brutal, but the goal is justice. Never confuse the methods required by war with the peace we seek. In a perfect world, none of this violence would be necessary, but we live in a world where the strong oppress the weak, and the weak must fight back however they can. I think we've covered everything I wanted to ask. Is there anything final you want to say to those who will hear this conversation? To Muslims, stand firm. Don't let the West convince you that resistance is terrorism or that submission is peace. Your dignity, your faith, your future, these are worth fighting for. To Americans, you cannot win this war through military might. Your only path forward is to change your policies, to withdraw from lands that are not yours, to stop supporting oppression. The choice is yours, endless war or honorable peace. To the rest of the world, don't be silent while the powerful abuse the powerless. History will judge not just those who committed injustice, but those who stood by and did nothing. This is my message. This is the truth as I see it, and I will fight for this truth until my last breath. Osama bin Laden, thank you for this conversation, however difficult its content. We end this interview with more questions than answers, with a clearer understanding of an ideology that has shaped the 21st century for better or worse. The conflict he describes shows no signs of resolution, and the methods he advocates remain as controversial as ever. What we've heard today is the unfiltered worldview of a man who has fundamentally altered history, whose actions have killed thousands, and whose legacy will be debated for generations. Whatever one's perspective on the issues raised, this conversation stands as a document of a crucial moment in history, a moment when the world changed and continues to change in ways we're still struggling to understand. One more thing before we truly conclude. You've lived through so much: the Soviet War, the formation of Al-Qaeda, September 11th, the American invasion. Looking back, is there a specific moment where you felt the course was set, where there was no turning back? The moment was when I saw the first American soldier step onto the soil of Arabia. Before that, there was still a possibility of resolution through traditional means, but that moment crystallized everything. It showed that the Saudi rulers had no sovereignty, no dignity, no faith. They invited foreign armies to protect themselves against their own neighbors. In that moment, I realized that the rot was deeper than I had thought, that the corruption of our leaders was complete, and that only through complete upheaval could we restore Islam to its rightful place. That was when peaceful reform became impossible, and armed struggle became inevitable. Some have suggested that your motivations are not purely religious or political, but personal, that you were angry at being sidelined by the Saudi government, that this is about your ego rather than your faith. Those who say this don't understand faith. When you truly believe, when you truly submit to Allah, your ego becomes irrelevant. Yes, the Saudi government rejected my offers to defend the country with mujahideen instead of American troops. Yes, they revoked my citizenship and froze my assets. But these personal affronts matter only because they revealed a larger truth, that the House of Saud cares more about American approval than Islamic principles. My response wasn't personal revenge. It was recognition that the entire system needed to be challenged. If my motivations were purely personal, I could have sought personal reconciliation. Instead, I committed to a path that ensured I would never be reconciled with them or with their American masters. You mentioned challenging the entire system. What would you put in its place? Specifically, what would governance look like in your ideal Islamic state? Governance under Sharia law as practiced during the early caliphate. A system where rulers are accountable to Islamic principles, not to Western powers or personal wealth. Where justice is administered according to Quranic law. Where usury is forbidden. Where society is organized around faith rather than materialism. The Taliban in Afghanistan provided a model, imperfect but moving in the right direction. They eliminated the warlordism that plagued the country. They reduced opium production dramatically. They implemented Islamic law. The West portrayed this as oppression, but they brought order and justice according to our values, not yours. The Taliban's treatment of women, their destruction of cultural heritage, like the Bamiyan Buddhas, their harsh punishments, these are difficult for most of the world to accept. These are difficult for the West to accept because you judge by Western standards. Women under the Taliban were protected, their honor preserved. The Bamiyan Buddhas were idols, explicitly forbidden in Islam, standing in a Muslim country. As for punishments, Islamic law provides for severe consequences for severe crimes. This maintains social order. Compare the chaos and crime in Western societies with the order in societies that implement Sharia properly. Which is better, freedom that leads to social decay or discipline that maintains virtue? Many Muslims would disagree with your characterization, would argue that Islam allows for more moderate interpretations. Many Muslims have been corrupted by Western education, by Western media, by the desire to be accepted by Western powers. They want to make Islam palatable to the West, so they water it down. They reinterpret clear commandments. They compromise fundamental principles. This is not strength. This is weakness disguised as moderation. True Islam is not moderate by Western standards. It is complete submission to Allah's will, without compromise, without apology. Let's discuss the impact on Muslim communities in the West. After September 11th, Muslims in America and Europe faced increased discrimination, surveillance, even violence. Do you feel any responsibility for that? The discrimination you mention is not new. It existed before September 11th. We merely revealed the true attitudes that were always there beneath the surface. If Western societies truly valued tolerance and equality, the actions of a few would not lead to discrimination against millions. The fact that they did proves that the tolerance was always conditional, always fragile. As for responsibility, I would say that Muslims in the West must now make a choice. Do they stand with their faith and their people, or do they seek acceptance from societies that will never truly accept them as equals? That sounds like you're calling for Muslims in the West to turn against their adopted countries. I'm calling for them to recognize where their true loyalty should lie. If those countries go to war against Muslim lands, if they support the oppression of Muslims, how can a Muslim in good conscience support that?
There is a hadith. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said that all Muslims are like one body. If one part hurts, the whole body feels the pain. Muslims in the West should feel the pain of Muslims in Palestine, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. If they don't, their faith is questionable. But many Muslims in the West condemn terrorism while still maintaining their faith. They see no contradiction. They have been taught to see resistance as terrorism. This is the triumph of Western propaganda. When Palestinians resist occupation with stones, they're called terrorists. When we resist with available means, we're called terrorists. The word has lost all meaning except as a tool to delegitimize resistance. These Muslims you speak of have accepted the oppressor's language, the oppressor's framing. They are Muslims in name, but their thinking has been colonized. We're running along, but I want to ask, you've been called the most wanted man in the world, with the largest bounty in history on your head. Does that concern you? Do you worry about betrayal from within? Betrayal is always a possibility in any organization. Judas betrayed Jesus. Hypocrites existed even in the time of the prophet. But the truly faithful cannot be bought. Those who stand with us do so because of conviction, not money. Could someone betray me for the reward? Possibly. But if they were capable of such betrayal, they were never truly with us to begin with. As for being the most wanted man, this is a badge of honor. It means I am the greatest threat to the greatest oppressor. It means they fear what we represent. Finally, if you could see 20, 30 years into the future, what do you think you would see? How does this story end? I see American power broken, not through a single dramatic defeat, but through exhaustion and economic collapse. I see the Islamic world free from foreign occupation, from puppet governments, from Western interference. I see a restored caliphate, perhaps not exactly as it existed historically, but adapted to modern times while maintaining Islamic principles. I see Muslims standing with dignity, no longer subject to humiliation. Whether I live to see this or die before it happens is irrelevant. The trajectory is set. The process has begun. History moves slowly, but it moves in the direction of justice. And I see myself either as a martyr whose blood fertilized the seeds of Islamic resurgence, or as an old man watching the fruits of these struggles finally ripen. Either way, the cause will prevail. That's a very definitive vision for someone in such uncertain circumstances. Uncertainty is only for those who lack faith. I have certainty because I have faith. I know that Allah's promise is true, that those who struggle in His path will ultimately succeed, if not in this world, then in the next. This certainty is what allows me to persist despite all hardships, what allows our fighters to face death without fear, what makes us impossible to defeat through conventional means. You can kill our fighters, destroy our bases, freeze our finances, but you cannot kill certainty. You cannot destroy faith. This is why we will win. I think we've truly covered everything now. This has been one of the most challenging interviews of my career. Thank you for your time, Osama bin Laden. May Allah guide you to the truth. Thank you for allowing me to speak directly to your audience. Let them judge for themselves whether my words have merit or whether I am the monster their governments describe. The truth needs no defense. It speaks for itself. And with that, we conclude this unprecedented conversation. Whatever history's final judgment on Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, this interview stands as a primary document of a worldview that has shaped our century. His words today have been defiant, unrepentant, and uncompromising. They offer insight into a mind that has altered the course of history and continues to influence global events years after the actions that made him infamous. The conflict between the ideology expressed here and the prevailing order shows no signs of resolution. Where it leads, only time will tell. This has been a special presentation, a conversation with Osama bin Laden.